Well, hello. How are we? All right, so today is day 3 of our Start Finding Success challenge. So much fun, right? All right, my dears. So let's make sure we've got some sound. Yeah, we gotta make sure we got sound. We do. Maybe. I forgot to check that and get everything going first, so. All right. Okay. So, turn the volume down on that. Okay. All right, my dears. So, we are talking all about proofing your breads today, okay? All right? And if you are really enjoying these focused classes, I want you to let me know. Let me know. Please get down in the comments if you have specific questions or concerns that you are facing in your own baking at home. Let me know. Get active down in the comments and I will make sure I answer those questions, okay? And if you're here with me live, I might even answer them right here while we're live, okay? So, yeah, we need to start finding more success in our baking because this winter has been really hard on home bakers. So hard. And I want to make this so much easier for you because when it's easy, it's fun. Now, yeah, there's always going to be a challenge because bread is always changing. That's one of the beautiful parts about it. It's never the same twice. It's always going to be a little bit different. It's always going to need a little bit different water content. It's always going to be, well, that's the wrong way to say that, but it's always going to need a little more flour or a little less flour. Maybe it needs a little more yeast. It needs a little bit more salt in certain mixes. All of these things, you don't know what's going to work for your situation and what your family's going to love, what you're going to love, what's going to make you feel that your belly and just go, oh, yeah, that like hit the spot. If you're anything like me, when I like to bite into bread, I want to bite into it. Like I am a food connoisseur. I might be little, but honey, oh, I like food. Food is good. And when I'm eating food, I want to have all those complex flavors that explode in my mouth. Like, have you ever seen the cartoon Ratatouille? Okay, so if you haven't, this cartoon is about this little rat. He's a sewer rat, okay? But he dreams of being something bigger, something better. He actually dreams of being a professional chef. Okay, so this is awesome. This really is so much fun. His dad and his brother, they're always on his case going, why can't you just be a normal sewer rat? Will you just shut up and eat your garbage? And he's like, no, Dad, we're eating garbage. Literally. So there's this one little scene at the very beginning of it, and he goes and finds these fancy cheeses outside this fancy restaurant, and he takes a bite of one, and he's just like, and his eyes like kind of like have stars in them because he's tasting all the flavors in it. And then he takes a bite of something else. I think it was a berry or something. I don't remember exactly, but he takes this bite, and then he puts them both in his mouth, and there's like fireworks shooting up into the air, and he's just like, all those flavors combining and exploding inside your mouth. It is, oh, it's so good. So good. When you're eating your home my breads, you should be having that experience. You should be like wowed at the complexities of the flavors that you find in your bread. Okay, now I actually have a little challenge I want you to try. I want you to go find just a little tiny thin piece of chocolate, preferably an Andes, okay? Only one piece. And if you don't believe there are so many complex flavors in your foods, this little mini challenge, fun challenge is actually for you, okay? So Their Andes are just little. They're like an inch long and they're like a half inch wide. They're just these little itty bitty tiny mint chocolate candies, okay? I want you to make that little mini chocolate candy a 2-biter snack, okay? And you're not gonna chew it. You're literally gonna let it melt on your tongue, okay? You're just gonna let it melt in your mouth. Let me tell you something. When you do this, literally, there are so many layers of complex flavors in that little tiny chocolate that it's insane, okay? And you will find that if you've got this crazy intense chocolate craving, you're just like, I just can't find it. Try an Andes Mint, okay? Seriously, try an Andes Mint and let it just melt on your mouth. And by the time you finish that second bite, you finish that little tiny square, your chocolate cravings will be gone. Your chocolate cravings will be gone, your sweet cravings will be gone, and you'll be just totally satisfied. I know it sounds crazy, right? Right? But why would that be completely satisfying when it's such a small morsel? Because you're actually stopping to take the time to literally feel and taste and savor every tiny morsel of it. And when you do that, it's satisfying. And you do find all these new layers of flavors that you did not know existed. And it's awesome, okay? So you can do this with bread too. Now granted, yes, with bread, you still gotta chew it. And like, when you bite into bread, you should be able to like sink your teeth in it. It shouldn't just like turn into, like, it shouldn't be like biting into a cloud. That's my own personal preference. But personally, if I'm gonna sit down and eat something, I want it to be satisfying, not only to my taste buds, but I want to be satisfied, right? How often do we eat these foods and like we'll eat until we're literally stuffed and we're still going, oh man, like I'm still craving something, but I literally can't fit another bite in my mouth. When you slow down when you're eating your foods, ooh, honey, slow down and actually enjoy those flavors and actually try to find all those flavors. And when you do this, this also helps you redefine how you are baking your foods, okay? The different types of like grains that you use, the different types of sugars or yeasts and everything else that you put into it. Okay, so now on to proofing. Proofing also affects those flavors, okay? It changes the texture, it changes how it raises, it changes the actual flavors of the bread. The longer you proof it, the more you proof it, the closer your bread is actually going to turn into almost a sourdough. It's going to start getting that slight sourdough flavor to it. Just a touch, just a hint. And different types of proofing are going to enhance the sweetness. And if you over mix and over proof it, then it becomes, well, the more you need and the more that you proof your bread, the more elasticity that bread creates. It's more gum that you are releasing from the actual wheat grain itself, okay? This is amazing. It's amazing. So simply by changing how you proof your bread, you can literally change the type of bread that you're making. That's awesome, right? Right? And if you're having a problem with getting your bread to actually raise up like it's supposed to and bake out, then honey, we need to be looking into how long you're kneading it, how long you're letting it rest or proof. Now, resting and proofing, let's clear up a little bit of confusion on resting and proofing. Proofing is the actual act of when you're raising your bread. Resting your bread is when you actually just set it off to the side to let it sit for a few minutes. Or in some cases, you put it in your fridge overnight to rest it. all this does is just soften up the grains. It's not necessarily about getting a bigger raise on it. It's not about expanding the air bubbles and making the yeast like really grow inside. It's just about having it sit for a minute. And that sitting is going to change the texture of your bread, okay? Now, when you're making breads, depending on the type of grains that you're using, is going to affect how much of that elasticity and fluff you're going to get to your bread, okay? So if you want those super soft, fluffy breads, such as your white breads, then you need to use a finer grain of flour, okay? Now, if you like a denser bread like me, one that like when you bite into it, you know you're like truly biting into it. Like there's no smush to it. It just, excuse me, I guess. Pardon me. Okay, so with whole wheats, you're not going to have that same effect, okay? With whole wheats, they're always going to be far more dense, okay? Far more dense. And they're not going to have that same bread interior texture that you're accustomed to from the store. It's just going to be more dense. I don't know how to explain it. It's like coarser, and it's like the grains like kind of stick to each other a little bit more. Whereas if you've really gone through and done multiple proofings, and you've really gone through and you've done multiple kneadings, and you've let it rest for different time periods, it's going to start becoming a little more elasticity. So like those grains are going to start spreading out, kind of like gum, basically, like chewing gum. Like imagine chewing gum, or maybe even a spider web. Maybe a spider web might be a good example. But it's going to make them string out. Whereas your average homemade whole wheat bread, like those grains, like they kind of stick together in like little clumps. So it's like clump, 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 clump. But they're all stuck together, okay? But there's little air holes between all those clumps. I don't know how to show this with my hands. So there's like little air holes that like form between all of these clumps that are all stuck together with a whole wheat bread. Now, if you're wanting to stretch those out so they're more springy instead of dense, then you're going to have to change how you proof your bread. Okay? So give me 1 second because my kids are doing something. I need to go check on them. And I'll be right back, y'all. All right, I'm back. Sorry, y'all. So I heard the front door open, and I was like, no. The sun is finally back out here, and there's a little bit of a warmth to the air, and my kids are like, I want to go outside, but it's still frigid. It's still too cold to let them go out, and they keep trying to run out because they just want to go out and play in the snow. Oh, that's to be a child again. Right? Okay, so let's go into the actual proofing parts. Okay, this is just a very, very short class. I'm trying to keep on time today. Okay, so if the more you proof your bread and rest your bread, so say, for example, with a French bread, you get that very string. There's a lot of spring to the bread, but at the same time, it's very dry. It's a dry bread, okay? There's very little moisture left in there. So the more proofing you do and beating it back down, proof it up, beat it back down, proof it up, the more you do that, the more spring you're going to get. But also, the drier your bread's going to be. And a similar thing happens with kneading your bread. So if you don't knead your bread long enough, because we're making yeast breads here, if you don't knead it long enough, then your bread, okay, yeast loves the natural glucoses in wheat, okay? That's its preferred sugar, okay? So in order to release those glucoses from the grains, from inside those grains, you have to work it. You got to cause that friction inside your actual dough. And you do that by kneading, all right? Like you're basically, like, it's like rubbing two stones together to create sand. That's what you're doing inside, just on a much smaller base. So the kneading actually pulls the glucoses and all those natural sticky gooey sugars from the grains, okay? Your yeast uses that to actually continuously grow, okay? Because yeast is a living thing, which makes your bread a living thing, honey, which is why we always do handmade bread, because we got to connect with our living world, right? That's what grounds us, is by connecting to living things, and your homemade bread is a living thing, honey. So depending on the type of grains that you're using, now we're talking about wheat grains for this particular example. Wheat grains have glucose. Not all grains do, such as oatmeal is glucose free, okay? So, or it's low glucose, I don't remember exactly, okay? Anyway, so you've got to work those grains enough that enough of the glucoses get released so that your bread will actually raise. If you over knead your bread, it will actually turn your bread stiff, and then it will start to dry it out. So your final bread that you pull from the oven is going to be drier if you over mix it, which is why you're actually supposed to stop mixing when before your bread rips. But for many of you, you're just starting off and you haven't developed the feel for when your bread makes that turn when you're kneading it. So when your bread turns, it starts to become a little stiffer under your hands. It's got a little more spring. And if you want to see a perfect example of that, make sure you go tune in to the masterclass that we did last week. I think it went out last week. It might be the week before. I don't remember. Go check that one out. Okay, so you can, here inside the group, you can scroll down. It's just a little ways down. If you're catching the replay, it's over on our YouTube channel, y'all. So check out the masterclass, because I show you precisely what that looks like when your bread has made the turn. There's a very specific texture your bread's going to have, and what happens if you continue to knead it to the point where it rips. Now, if you stop kneading as soon as it rips, it's not going to cause any damage to your bread. But if you continue to knead it after it rips, just keep on going, yeah, you're going to be releasing a lot more glucoses. But you're also going to turn your actual final bread loaf stiffer, and it's going to bake up drier. Okay? So overworking it is actually going to dry your bread out. Homemade bread is already crumbly, okay? It's already kind of it's more crumbly than your store-bought breads. And that's because, it's just because of the process that's gone into it. And you're using like whole grains versus just very, very fine, highly refined flours. The finer your flour is, yeah, the faster those glucoses like are released, and the more sticky and gooey and gummy and elasticity there is between the grains. With your whole wheats though, or your home grounds, they're not that fine, all right? And they do require a little bit more working in order to have the same result, okay? But, so this is going to change the texture of your bread and the moisture content inside your final bread when it comes out of the oven, and how well it stores in the cupboard. Now, a drier bread will store better in your cupboard than a very moist bread will in your cupboard, because there's moisture there and there is yeast and sugars and all that in your bread, which invites bacteria to come in and start flourishing. So remember, homemade bread stored in your cupboard for 3 to 4 days without refrigeration. Now, if you take it straight from your oven, as soon as it's cold, wrap it up super tight, put it in your fridge, and keep it for up to about 10 days, okay? And it's still gonna be good. And there's other things that you can add to your bread to actually prolong it too, which is really cool. Natural seasons that preserve your bread, that you don't have to worry about being harmful to you, okay? So all of these things are going to change your flavor. So the more you raise your bread, the more you do your proofing and your resting, the stronger the yeast taste is going to come out, and the more of a sourdough flavor you're going to start getting, all right? In fact, if you leave your bread out on the counter in a big bowl so that it can't like overflow, and you leave it out there for 24 hours and then come back and make your bread up, you are going to have a slightly fermented sourdough bread, which is really yummy, okay? But it's not a true sourdough, okay? And it's gonna be a lot more dry. You're gonna have to just be willing to accept the fact that these breads are going to sometimes be drier depending on the methods that you put into them, okay? So, my dear, the longer you raise your bread, sometimes you need to adjust your salts, okay? And if you like a sweeter bread, you might need to change your sugars too, because that mix of like sweet and the sour of a bread don't always go together. So if you're doing a more of a sourdough-like flavor, like I was just telling you about, you actually kind of want to cut back on those sugars a little bit, because you don't want to mix that sweet with that sour. It's just not very good, okay? Sometimes you need just a touch more salt. Certain grains mixed together are going to need more salt in order to preserve the flavor of that fresh, pulled out of the oven bread. Now, the rule of thumb that I use salt-wise is that you need a half a tablespoon per every 2 loaves. So it's just a little bit over, no, just a little bit under 1 teaspoon. Okay, so a half a tablespoon is 1.5 teaspoons. So half of that, can't even think. So that's 3/4, right? 3/4 of a teaspoon is what I have found to be a very safe number for the salt in your bread. So it's not going to create a salty bread. It's actually going to be on the low end. Do not add less than that, okay? You always want to have at least that much per loaf, okay? Anything less than that, and then your bread starts coming out of the oven with kind of a stale taste, okay? Unsalted bread is not good. Been there, done that. Lessons learned, moved on. But you also don't want too much. So most recipes actually call for a full tablespoon per 2 loaves, okay? Now, yes, you can use that much and you'll be just fine. But if you're on a salt-restricted diet, cut it back to a half a tablespoon. So you've got a full half tablespoon leeway that you can use for 2 loaves of bread. So if you've got a recipe that makes 3, such as our bell-proof bread recipe makes 3, you can easily bump it up just a little bit, and from that half a tablespoon, and you're good, okay? You're good. All right, so you're gonna have to always be changing these things. And sometimes the weather outside is going to change those too. So if your bread is raising up like supersonic speed, this is when it's a good idea to actually slow that down and put it in your fridge. Because if it raises too fast, you're going to have a very strong yeast flavor, which is not very good. But if you raise it too slow, you're going to have the same effect. But raising it too fast sometimes has adverse effects, okay? And that's just something I'm going to let y'all figure out for yourself. If you raise it too fast, it's going to cause some very strange side effects and flavors in your brain, all right? But that's far too detailed to go into for this class today. All right, my dears, if you haven't already, I want you to go sign up for the waitlist of Homemade Breads for the Busy Parent, okay? It's amazing. So seriously, if you've ever had this memory of walking into grandma's house, or maybe it was your mom, and just that smell that just hit you of that fresh homemade bread out of the oven, and it was just instant peace and comfort. That beautiful, intense smell, oh, that can change worlds, my dear. And maybe she even lets you plunge your hands into that soft dough as it just like gooed and enveloped around your hands, and looking up at her and just seeing her smiling down at you, side by side with you, as you punch that dough down so that she could form it into her loaves and get it baking. And then sitting down with her at the table, and if you had a really awesome grandma, she made you some fresh honey butter to put on there. Oh, heaven! Absolute heaven. If you've not had fresh homemade bread from the oven that's still hot, yes, I know, that's a no-no with yeast breads, but fresh from the oven, still hot, with fresh homemade farm honey butter. Oh, honey, you don't know what you're missing. Seriously, you don't know what you're missing. But bread is healing. It's healing. And those memories are healing. And just the actual tastes and the flavors, they're healing to the soul. But also, homemade breads truly are nourishing. They are a satisfying, nourishing, beautiful thing, all right? And if you have these memories, or maybe you have the romanticized idea of these memories because you wish that you had them, imagine for a moment that you came and joined me in Homemade Breads for the Busy Parent, and I showed you, walked you through hand by hand, step by step, through the process of baking homemade breads. And then when you were ready, after you actually had some skill under your belt and you knew what you were doing, you invited your children into the kitchen with you to start plunging their hands into that soft dough to bake side by side with you. Now, it doesn't always go pretty, my friend. I'm not going to lie. There are times where having your kids come in and join you in the kitchen can be kind of a nightmare. But the important thing to remember is to just kick back and laugh and just have fun with it. Because these are moments with our family that cannot be replaced. These are simple, pure, uncontaminated moments that can inspire them. And if you let them into the kitchen to come in and do it with you, honey, you are giving them skills for their actual life as an adult. Who knows how far that one moment of you actually sitting down and teaching them how to, with the help that you need, either directly from me or in our special segment where my son literally comes in and teaches all of the kids how to bake, side by side with you and side by side with me. Baking together as families. All together at the same time, in the same place, walking through the process. Having those skills for our children is something that can change their world. There are so many things that you can learn from making homemade bread, and this is something that could be beneficial to you beyond words, but also to them. Now imagine for a moment you were the one that created those memories for your children or your grandkids, or possibly it's your best friend's kids that are over all the time and you love them as if they were your own. If you are that strong parent figure in children's lives. And you would love to be able to introduce them to this world where they are in control of what happens. That they can make whatever it is that's coming their way. Honey, you have no idea how far those ramifications can go. And you would be the one that inspired it all. My dear, Homemade Breads for the Busy Parent is your opportunity to learn how to do that side by side with your kids, with breads that are specifically designed based off of all pioneer baking secrets that create your breads faster, and they retain their moisture for longer without drying out and becoming all crumbly. Breads that you can learn how to make a different type of bread for multiple different occasions in your life using the exact same recipe. I'll teach you how to add certain things to change it, how you can just change your method just the tiniest little bit. Add this one little tiny step. Change this one little oil here. And you've got a completely different bread. It's the same bread. It's the same recipe. All you did was change one thing. And I'll show you how to do that. So that whether you've got birthday parties coming over and you've got to whip up bread, or you've got to get some homemade pizza and some homemade breadsticks and cheese sticks and all those good things fixed up, because that's a lot cheaper to make it yourself. Honey, I will show you how to do that. You want to be able to put out some beautiful sandwich bread? Honey, I got you there too. You need to learn how to mix your grains up differently so that you can enjoy your whole wheat diet, your need, your want for that healthier life, and your family is still wanting only those fine, refined flours of white bread that's soft and fluffy and dough, like a cloud. And you need to find that middle ground. Honey, that's what I do. I show you how to take these recipes, the exact same recipe, and make different breads, and you can make them to your taste. And we do it in a fast, easy, and a simple way that is literally taken straight from the pages of the pioneers that settled my hometown valley, right here in Star Valley. All right, my dears, if you want in on that action, please go sign up for Homemade Breads for the Busy Parent waitlist. So it is at bit.ly/busy parent waitlist. All lowercase, all one word. And you can get there directly from there, or the link is in my bio. And here on Facebook and on YouTube, we'll be placing the clickable link down in the description. All right, my friends, we will see you tomorrow. Oh, yeah. If you're loving these, make sure you get down in the comments and you let me know, okay? That way, I can make sure I'm touching in on the specific things that you are needing help with right here and right now.